Hey everybody, welcome to LDS Singles Anonymous. My name is Buzz.
I'm Mackenzie.
And I'm Josiah.
Today we've learned that expectations and reality sometimes don't meet. But we are going to turn the time over to Mackenzie. She is running this one.
Oh boy.
So we're gonna answer what you want to answer. We're gonna say what you want us to say. You are the king, the boss, the queen, and everything in between today.
Everything in between.
So roll them.
Wow, I was not expecting that. How about we start with your last question that you asked not too long ago?
Oh, I have many questions for you, Mackenzie. One of them is, for those of you that didn't catch the last podcast, I was not LDS, but I recently converted. And what was it like for you as an LDS person practicing to date somebody who was not LDS and who initially said, I'll date you, but I'm not going to convert?
That is what you said multiple times. I like the word you said, practicing, because yes, I am practicing. I'm not all the way good at it yet, though. But
Practicing
but
perfect,
don't
right?
surgeons practice medicine?
yeah, well, hopefully
perfect.
they're getting better every day
Like they say,
I used to
practicing
work-
that
before they
worries
practice
me.
on me.
I used to work at Carnegie Hall, and they always used to say, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And you're supposed to say, practice, practice, practice. And I would just say, just go to 57th and 7th.
Yeah.
So as a practicing LDS person,
Yeah.
what was it like dating somebody who you sincerely thought would not convert?
I did. I believed you. And I would say there's a lot of elements, but probably the biggest thing for me was I felt peace about it. And I couldn't articulate why to my friends who knew that, like, for example, getting married in the temple is important to me, and having a family that is eternal is important to me, and having a relationship with a significant other that respects and honors what I believe. And the easiest way to do that is if you believe the same thing, because why would you not honor your own belief? Well, some people don't, but I just felt like peace about it, that it was going to be okay, whatever. And also one thing that I know you know, because I told you this a lot, you'd be like, are you sure you want to date someone who's not LDS? And I'd be like, no, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We're going to find out, because I've never dated someone who's not LDS before. I've gone on dates with people who are not members. I've gone on a lot of dates in general. I've dated a lot of people, kind of like what you've talked about in a previous episode about like the numbers game. Like I've played the numbers game, both, short and longer relationships. And like, I know myself well enough to be pretty intuitive around whether I like being around the person or not. And I felt like you were an interesting person, and I felt like you were respectful of what I believed, and open to talk about a variety of things from the very beginning. And I just felt like I didn't need to be sure, so why make myself sure so suddenly? And lo and behold, like we've kind of both changed and learned and grown together along the way. And also, like, one thing I do want to point out, I did not flirt to convert, right? Would you say?
No, that's absolutely true. And that was very important for me. A lot of my family, I actually got a lot of pushback early on, even just the fact that I was dating an LDS woman, and that I just went to church with her just to hang out with her because she happened to be in town. We went to a singles ward in Salt Lake on Father's Day, and so I was talking to my family because it's Father's Day, even though my father's passed away many years ago. And just the fact that I was dating an LDS woman, my people were going like, "Oh, it's a cult," and saying just kind of rude and classic inappropriate things. I was already getting negative pushback, and so I suspect that a lot of people in my family would think that she was like trying to convert me, or that she secretly wanted me to convert or whatever, but she had almost nothing to do with it other than the fact that because we had so many deep and profound conversations about spirituality and the fundamental nature of reality and what happens to you before you're born and after you die, and I had sort of mixed and conflicting views about those things, and wasn't really sure, but had some ideas and was kind of influenced by some Buddhist ideas, but that never really satisfied me. And going to Buddhist fellowships had never really satisfied me, just because of that situation. At one point, I just picked up a Book of Mormon just to figure out what on earth this woman that I'm dating believed. And that's what converted me. I ended up reading the Book of Mormon in like 2 weeks or something, 3 weeks, I don't remember.
I didn't even know you had a copy.
And decided to convert, and I think it was probably as much of a surprise to me as anybody else, but definitely a big surprise to her and to all my friends. So definitely there was no pressure at all. All Mackenzie ever did was honestly and supportively answer any questions that I had, even if they were naive questions. So I would be interested for you to recount from your perspective some of the conversations we had about potential hang-ups or red flags before either of us thought I was going to convert, and how you navigated those, like how we would raise kids and those sort of things.
I think one of the earliest things that I knew was going to be difficult for me was I knew that you were well known for your expertise in coffee and wines, like that. You were kind of the go-to person to ask about that, and like I knew that was important to you. That was on your dating profile, was like somebody who's like you like I'm into women who are like picky about these things, and what on that list was coffee and food and things. And I was like, oh yeah, well I love the smell of coffee. I was like, I don't drink coffee. And so just thinking through like, okay, well logistically, if we got married and if we had kids, how would we, because we'd already talked about that you were okay with the idea of we would potentially raise the kids in the LDS church, but that you wouldn't convert or be LDS, but you'd be very supportive of me.
No, I was even more direct. I said I'd be happy to raise. I would rather raise the kids with a religious structure, even though at the time I didn't really believe in it personally. I reflected on my childhood, and I was raised in a sort of evangelical Christian church part of the time, and Armenian Orthodox. I'm half Armenian, so Armenian Orthodox the other part of the time. And I think I had a great childhood and turned out to be a halfway decent, hopefully, human being. And so I was always, not always, but since I decided I do actually want to have kids, I've thought it would be better to raise them with a structure, even if they rebel against it. And I say this in a tongue-in-cheek, but I mean it. It was also useful to have something to rebel against when I was in my teenage years and my 20s. Yeah. You know, structure, I think, is very, very, very important for kids. So I was always like, yes,
that's true.
Happy to go to church with you.
Supportive.
Happy to raise kids in the church if you want. But the issue was...
So then, but the logistical point was, well, then how do we go to church on Sunday and kids learn, like, word of wisdom and other churchy things, and then we go home and daddy drinks coffee? Like,
yeah, because I was early on, I was okay. Yeah. I was like, yeah, it's no problem if we have no alcohol in the house. That's fine.
Which I actually really liked how we talked through, like, how would we handle that? Like, on anything. Because it's not even just like, you drink coffee, I don't, church says don't drink coffee. It could be anything where you, like, disagree on something or have a different value system that's not even close to religious. Like, politics, I'd say, is creeping up there on being a major thing you're probably going to disagree about something on. Is to, like, the same thing why you asked me, where you're like, well, why don't you drink coffee? Like, why is coffee not a thing? And the assumption is because of caffeine, but it doesn't say that anywhere. So, like, we don't know why it says don't drink coffee in the Word of Wisdom. Like, honestly, we don't know. And so, but for me, what I have made it why I don't is, other than the faith aspect of, like, it's not like God says don't, so I won't, is... I don't like the idea of being dependent on a substance to get up in the morning or get going. I don't like feeling like, you know, I'm going to spend a lot of money on this one particular thing either, or devote, you know, so much care and concern to what should be an insignificant part of your day, which is drinking a beverage, to being like, oh yeah, I haven't had my coffee yet today, so therefore that justifies my behavior, kind of a thing, or addiction.
Which is the case for a lot of people, and I've noticed that in relationships too.
So yeah, that's why.
And for those reasons, like, just me personally, in addition to obeying the word of wisdom, I also do 0 caffeine in my life, and I do 0 soft drinks.
Yeah, you're even more than me.
Yeah.
But so in that conversation though, we were like, well, how would we handle that? The principle was, we don't start prescribing to the kids why we do or don't do any of the things. That in reality, it's just, here's the things, here's why mommy does what she does. Here's why daddy does what he does. I know I don't really do the mommy daddy thing, but anyway, you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's a little, it's a little gross and not my vibe. Not my thing.
Mother and father. No, I'm just kidding. Do or don't do the same thing or believe the same thing, and like you get to choose now. Like you go pray about it, and like to me that displays a lot of trust in not just like the principle or the system, but more so that we're raising healthy individuals who have minds that are raised by healthy individuals who have minds and relationships with God, that we're teaching the principle of ask God and be aware of and in tune with your own body and your own self, instead of relying on a church to tell you why or why not you do something, or even more so a peer group that's going to pressure you into doing or not doing something. So like eventually, I mean, I'm glad I don't have to worry about that anymore, that particular thing.
But would you have been okay with, I'm trying to remember the kind of solution.
Yeah, we had just decided we were going to say, this is why mom doesn't, and this is why dad does, and like it's up to you to decide what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I think that ultimately is a principle that we agreed on. And many times in these conversations where we would disagree about things like the continuity of a soul, like that was a big difference for the both of us. But either at the end of the conversation, we came back to the same general principles of we agree that it's up to an individual to make their own decision and to hold within their own hands a trust for themselves that they'll get to their answer. And that if there is a one answer ever out there, first of all, whatever I believe isn't going to change whatever's happening in the universe, because I'm not that important. But how I believe about how the universe behaves is going to dictate my actions, and therefore are my actions okay for you to partner with, and are your actions based on your belief systems okay with for me? And we ended up agreeing on enough life principles and like parenting principles even, and communication principles, and just growth in life and learning that, yeah, I ended up being okay with that. And we came to that principle together.
Yeah, I was going to ask on that subject. So how important do you think it is that that if you're dating somebody who's not LDS, that you at least have some foundational assumptions? Because I think one foundational assumption that we probably agreed upon right away, even though we had different ideas of it, was that there is such a thing as, for lack of a better word, a spiritual dimension to reality. Mm-hmm. That reality is not just, what pure, raw, hard scientific materialism tells us. We both believe that there's something else going on that's deeper than pure scientific materialism. How important is that? Like, if I had been a scientific materialist, like, there's no such thing as a soul, there's no such thing as God, there's no such thing as a spiritual world, there's just matter, and that's it, and all we can know about is matter, and what science tells us, and that's it. And there's nothing beyond that, and there's nothing worth investigating beyond that, because there's no way to prove it.
That's a really good question. I think it will vary per person on how much they care about that, because spirituality is very important to me. So yeah, I think that is important because it's important to me, but that's not always important to everyone. Not everyone's in the church believes even the same things or has the same emphasis on the spirituality of things.
And also, hopefully, whatever happens when we die, hopefully Heavenly Father's got it set up so that we don't get bored. It's not like, because that for a lot of people, and this was a big part of my personality for a long time until recently, that's a fear of getting into a relationship if you're LDS. It's like, well, if I commit to this person, that's a big deal. Forever is a big deal. Mm-hmm. And so I like them now, and maybe I'll like them 60 years from now, but will I like them 60 million years from now?
Yeah.
Right.
But as I've started to explore my faith more, what I'm starting to realize is some of these questions I think Heavenly Father's probably giggling at us. Like, you guys are so silly. You don't even understand time.
Right.
And because one thing I had studied long before I was ever even considering being baptized is I was always fascinated by the early Christian mystics. So I've read some, Dionysius the Areopagite, for example, Dionysius the Areopagite, who was, I want to say, like a 5th or 6th century Syrian monk. And he was exposed to the intellectual climate of Alexandria, the town, the city in northern Africa that had a great library. And so there were a lot of Christians there, but there were also a lot of people from the East, Far East, and the Middle East. So it was kind of a very melting pot of ideas. And his descriptions of God and time and how, like, God is beyond anything that we could comprehend, and he lives outside of time, and that's how he experiences time in a different way from us. And just kind of these deeper philosophical ideas of the fact that we live in time. We don't have any sort of ability to comprehend eternity in a sense.
Right.
And so a lot of these questions, I think, are simply pointless, silly, naive questions to even ask, because we don't even know what it's going to be like to experience eternity, because we've come through the veil of forgetfulness. So we can't remember what that experience is like. But in my more moments of better clarity, I suspect that it's probably a different type of experience altogether. And so it doesn't make sense necessarily to try and translate your current human experience into what eternity would.
We have a very finite mind. We have a very finite understanding. And to try to contemplate anything outside of the world, everything in our world has a beginning and an end. We're born, we die. Our morning has a beginning and an end, and our day has a beginning and an end. I don't know that we're set up to really understand things outside of this sphere. And who knows what they're going to be. But we'll figure out when we get there.
But it has a big impact on dating, because now all of a sudden your decisions take on an eternal significance.
Oh, without a doubt.
But I think at the same time, again, we can't even really understand what that eternity is. So I think it's still important to use the agency that Heavenly Father gave us now, and the knowledge and tools that He gave us now, to just make the best decision that you can. And then again, trust and have faith that the eternal side of things will kind of be sorted out for you as you grow and change and ultimately are transformed through death and the resurrection.
Right. Well, but isn't that life?
Yes.
Make the best decision you can today.
With the information
Based on
you've got
today's
now.
information.
Trust and hope and faith that tomorrow's going to work out too.
That's a great definition of faith, by the way, and which is why, again, I decided to change my mind about conversion, because at one point I was a very scientific-minded person. But what you just said is true of every human being. If you don't kill yourself today, you are by definition already acting in faith. We have an a priori construct that determines the way that we live from day to day, and there's no other way to describe that except faith. Now, you can try and say, oh, it's because of instinct and it's because of evolutionary biology and all these sort of things, but there's a substrate, there's some sort of construct that was built on. And I think that's what John was getting at when he said in the beginning was the Word and the Word was God, and is that ideas, words, things that we speak, we're actually manipulating reality in a real sense. Because the way you talk about things influences the way you perceive them, and the way you perceive them influences the way you act. And that's a very old idea. It's a very ancient idea. I mean, the Hindus have this idea too. They call speech vak, as the Sanskrit word. And they believe that you literally create reality, and that's what they mean when they say reality is maya. It's an illusion. It's not an illusion in the sense that it's fake. It's an illusion in the sense that we create it. And we know that with Gestalt psychology now too. Like when you look at the world, we're only getting this tiny strip of sensory information, and we overlay concepts onto that to perceive reality. And even just visible light is just this tiny strip of the whole electromagnetic spectrum. So creation is something that we're kind of doing in a sense every time we look out at the world. And so the fact that you go to bed tonight and you assume that you're going to wake up tomorrow and that the laws of the universe are going to more or less be functioning the same way that they are is an act of faith. And it's just as much of an act of faith to believe that, we're this flash of consciousness that only is here for 80 years. And on either side of that is eternal nothingness, eternal darkness or eternal nothingness. That's just as much a leap of faith as believing that, we came from a spirit world and came through the veil and are here now.
Sure.
Or just as much a leap of faith as believing in reincarnation. So pick the one that makes the most sense to you and that bears the best fruit.
Right.
That leads you to, like she was saying, hopefully, I take that as a big compliment, hopefully it's true, that she got an intuition early on that regardless of what I believed, it led me to bear good fruit of like the kind of person that I want to spend time with and possibly be romantically involved with. Hopefully, you pick something and you see the fruit of that in your own life, and then that's faith. So we all have faith. So you might as well pick something that bears good fruit for you.
But I think faith is only part of the story there. Because another big part of it that gives us reason to keep having faith is hope. And I think a lot of people throw the word hope out there super frivolously, like, oh, I hope it doesn't rain tomorrow, or like, I hope I can finish the soccer game, or like, oh, I hope I get this house, or like whatever. That with hope and faith needing to come together, for me personally, that I didn't have hope in marriage for a long time, or would cycle in and out of that. And that it took me changing my prayers to really change my heart on that that instead of praying for like this or that, or to meet somebody, or to even be the person to meet or whatever, I actually ended up changing my prayers to be, please bless me that I'll have faith in marriage. Please bless me that I'll have hope in marriage today. Please bless me that I have hope that, things can work out for me in a relationship like that. And starting to pray for that instead really made a huge impact in how I saw dating and how I felt about dating, how I felt about myself, how I felt about my relationship with God and what he wanted of me, and was able to open my heart to feel from him what he wanted from me as his daughter. And I think we've kind of talked in previous episodes about it, like church leaders who are like hyper focused on changing your relationship status or whatever. And I've kind of seen, especially as I've started praying more for hope and faith in relationships and in marriage in particular, as an eternal principle that could apply to me. Like, not even like literally like, will I ever find somebody? It's like, can I be someone who wants that? And as I've prayed for that and prayed for eyes to see that and a heart to listen for that, I have noticed like have a little bit more faith and hope in the leaders too, that's not what they're trying to do, is change our relationship status. At least maybe not because it's bad that we're single, but because they're happy. Like, we've had this conversation too, where like, I don't remember what I was offering you. Oh, I remember Taylor Swift. Where I was like, hey, you've got to listen to Taylor Swift because you'd never like heard her play or whatever. Didn't really know exactly who she was. And I was like, oh, you got to listen to this. And you started to feel a little bit like, why are you telling me I have to? And I wasn't trying to tell you literally have to listen to Taylor Swift. It was like...
Except you said that.
I know, but that's the point. No, it was not really that much. But I could hear how you would think that. And I've appreciated you bringing up that that's how it felt to you, especially as a musician, being told like you have to this or have to that. If I say you have to try this drink, like, or you have to try this food, I don't literally mean you have to, you're going to die. What I'm trying to express is like, I really like this and I want you to try it too. Sure. Like, I want you to love this thing that I love. Right. And I feel like that's what a lot of leaders are mistakenly communicating, that we have to, or that we're bad because we're not married. But in reality, they're saying, I love this and I want you to have the same joy that I have. And this is all I have experienced to know how to get there.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
I know when I found a new band and I have to tell people, wow, these guys are nuts. Listen to this. But, I found something.
Yeah, it's excitement.
Like, I'm excited about this. I have to tell people, and they're going to go, what are these crazy Norwegians on about? And you just say, hey, do you like it or not? But yeah, no, I get where you're coming from. They're seeing something. This is how they got to that. Please, join with me. Come on the path.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's.
But the delivery of the message matters, Because
absolutely.
It does matter.
It's really hard to say. You
order.
have to listen to Taylor Swift. I'm not going to listen to that Taylor Swift song because that's how it was addressed to me.
Yeah.
But if you go, man, did you hear this new Taylor Swift song? She did some really cool things with some key changes. Now that I might listen to, but if somebody told me you got to listen to it, I'm probably not going to listen to it.
I think there's a lot of us at this age in the church right now who feel similarly about a lot of things. It worked in my favor as a youth because somebody came over to my house when I was 12 and they're introducing the young women's, what was it called? What was the young women's thing that you used to do and you get a medallion? Personal progress. And they were like, here's this personal progress thing that was like a Eagle Scout equivalent. And they're like, oh, you can do this until you're 18. And I was like, well, what happens if you finish earlier than that? Like, oh, you won't. You can't do that. Like, it'll take you that long. And I was like, well, what happens if you do? And they're like, well, you just can't. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it 3 times. And I did. Sometimes you just got to do or not do what you're challenged to do or not do. And that's not everybody's personality. Right. But, I think there's a lot of us these days who are that way. And that's, I think, coming back to maybe it's time to reflect on how we're praying is like, I was very contrarian and very resistant and very and a lot of terms that I think people would probably today label as feminist in a number of ways, although I tend to avoid any labels around personal belief systems. But I feel like my heart has been softened in a lot of ways towards being open from the same perspective of like how I could answer you when you said like, are you sure you want to date someone who's on LDS? And me being able to say, no, I'm not sure, but to do so like positively and with hope and enthusiasm came from originally changing how I was praying about relationships in general. Like I didn't have to be sure I would want it. I didn't have to be sure that I would.
Right.
But that I was praying for the hope and the faith that I could want it and that it could be good for me. So
Well, that's a different whole mindset. It's a different way to address something. I think a lot of times, we've beat our head against the wall so long for one direction that we can't see that there's other directions to go about that. And I've never thought about that. I have a terrible view of marriages because I was married for a very short time, and my little fake marriage wrecked me. And so, maybe I need to be open-minded that way, not so much that what was bad is real, but there could be something else out there, and there's a possibility that those terrible things won't happen again.
It's kind of like the same issue of don't confuse the sinner with the sin. Like you can condemn an action without judging a person. Like we know that adultery is wrong, but that doesn't mean that it's our place as members to judge or treat somebody differently for adultery. It's it's God's place to judge. Similarly, I had a very rough divorce of my parents when I was a kid. I lived through that. And that definitely wasn't the only factor, but that was definitely a big factor that turned me off to the notion of marriage for literally 25 years or so.
Right.
A long time, at least a fifth of a century, maybe a quarter of a century. And so having those notions, like we have bad feelings about something because you went through an experience with that thing, it's very difficult but important, I think, to disentangle like the circumstantial negative emotion from the thing itself.
Right.
Kind of like what Mackenzie was talking about earlier with people who have one bad experience with a church elder or one bad experience with one particular stated doctrine from church leadership, and all of a sudden it sours their whole relationship with the church, and they're sort of conflating the church with the doctrine, right? So I don't think we should conflate like our experiences with the institution itself, but so many of us do that, and it's not serving us. It's holding us back from actually having meaningful relationships.
Right,
because we're like, I don't want to get married. I don't want to commit, even though maybe that's actually what you really want, or even if it's not what you want, it's what's good for you. And there's a reason these institutions exist, and it's not just because of what the church wants. Like I said at an earlier moment, these are institutions that in some form or another have been around cross-culturally for thousands of years, and we tinker with that and dispose of that at our own peril.
Right. Well, like you said, it's about the fruits, and we are sometimes pushing things away that would be great fruits to us because of a mental mindset that we've made up our minds over this, and a lot of times it's because we didn't disentangle the emotions of something from the reality of what happened. And we're holding ourselves back from the benefit, from the fruit that could be in our lives if we would just unpack those things, understand what really is there and what is our future and how we can adjust and create a better future.
And it's sad because even really intelligent and mature people make that mistake as if we're like 14-year-olds again.
Right.
It's the same mistake as thinking you had one bad relationship, you were jilted once or whatever, and you think, oh, I'm never dating again, all relationships suck. It's like, no, that relationship sucked, but they don't all suck. Right?
You don't go out and have one meal and go, oh, that was the worst salad ever. Salads are bad.
Yes, exactly.
No.
unless it's pineapple.
Unless it's got pineapple in it. Then
Why would you put pineapple in a salad?
Thank you.
No, that's
even worse. Why would you put pineapple on a pizza?
Oh, stop. Vote below. Pineapple on pizza or not. I'm a yay for sure.
Well, I think I'm seeing things a little different now. I'm going to have to kind of rewatch this and align some of the thoughts to what was actually stated. But maybe you're seeing things different now. Maybe this topic and these couple of podcasts have actually helped. Maybe we can have a better tomorrow, a brighter tomorrow with fruits that we don't currently have than we have had it today. To think that the world could be better tomorrow is a wonderful feeling, and it's a wonderful hope. Hope for a better tomorrow. In fact, I think that's scriptural. Hope for a better tomorrow. So this has been LDS Singles Anonymous. Again, if you like the content, please like and subscribe. That will allow us to make more content that you can watch later. Thanks again for watching, and have a wonderful day.